Esther chapter 9. And so on the 13th day of the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, when the king's command and decree were to be executed, the very day on which the enemies of the Jews had expected to get them in their power, the opposite happened, and the Jews got their enemies in their power. Throughout the provinces of King Ahasuerus, the Jews mustered in their cities to attack those who sought their hurt, and no one could withstand them, for the fear of them had fallen upon all the peoples. Indeed, all the officials of the provinces, the satraps, the governors, and the king's stewards showed deference to the Jews because the fear of Mordechai had fallen upon them. For Mordecai was now powerful in the royal palace, and his fame was spreading through all the provinces. The man Mordecai was growing ever more powerful. So the Jews struck at their enemies with the sword, slaying and destroying. They wreaked their will upon their enemies. In the fortress Shushan, the Jews killed a total of 500 men. They also killed Parshandatha, Dalphon, Aspatha, Paratha, Adalia, Aridatha, Parmashta, Arisai, Aridai, and Vaizatha, the 10 sons of Ammon, son of Ammedatha, the foe of the Jews, but they did not lay hands on the spoil. When the number of those slain in the fortress Shushan was reported on that same day to the king said to Queen Esther, "In the fortress Shushan alone, the Jews have killed a total of 500 men, as well as the 10 sons of Haman. What then must they have done in the province of the realm? What is your wish now? It shall be granted you. And what else is your request? It shall be fulfilled." "If it please your majesty," Esther replied, "let the Jews in Shushan be permitted to act tomorrow also as they did today, and let Haman's 10 sons be impaled on the stake." The king ordered that this should be done, and the decree was proclaimed in Shushan. Haman's 10 sons were impaled, and the Jews in Shushan mustered again on the 14th day of Adar and slew 300 men in Shushan, but they did not lay hands on the spoil. The rest of the Jews, those in the king's provinces, likewise mustered and fought for their lives. They disposed of their enemies, killing 75,000 of their foes, but they did not lay hands on the spoil. That was on the 13th day of the month of Adar, and they rested on the 14th day and made it a day of feasting and merrymaking. But the Jews in Shushan mustered on both the 13th and 14th days, and so rested on the 15th and made it a day of feasting and merrymaking. That is why village Jews who live in unwalled towns observe the 14th day of the month of Adar and make it a day of merrymaking and feasting, and as a holiday and an occasion for sending gifts to one another. Mordecai recorded these events, and he sent dispatches to all the Jews throughout the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, near and far, charging them to observe the 14th and 15th days of Adar every year, the same days on which the Jews enjoyed relief from their foes, and the same month which had been transformed for them from one of grief and mourning to one of festive joy. They were to observe them as days of feasting and merrymaking, and as an occasion for sending gifts to one another and presents to the poor. The Jews accordingly assumed as an obligation that which they had begun to practice and which Mordecai prescribed for them. For Haman, son of Ammedatha, the Agagite, the foe of all the Jews, had plotted to destroy the Jews and had cast pur, that is, the lot with intent to crush and exterminate them. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded, with the promulgation of this decree, let the evil plot which he devised against the Jews recoil on his own head. So they impaled him and his sons on the stake. For that reason, these days were named Purim after Pur. In view, then, of all the instructions in the said letter and of what they had experienced in that matter and what had befallen them, the Jews undertook and irrevocably obligated themselves and their descendants, and all who might join them, to observe these 2 days in the manner prescribed and at the proper time each year. Consequently, these days are recalled and observed in every generation, by every family, every province, and every city. And these days of Purim shall never cease among the Jews, and the memory of them shall never perish among their descendants. Then Queen Esther, daughter of Abihail, wrote a second letter of Purim for the purpose of confirming with full authority the aforementioned one of Mordechai the Jew. Dispatches were sent to all the Jews in the 127 provinces of the realm of Asuros with an ordinance of equity and honesty. These days of Purim shall be observed at their proper time, as Mordecai the Jew and now Queen Esther has obligated them to do, and just as they have assumed for themselves and their descendants the obligation of the feast with their lamentations. And Esther's ordinance validating these observances of Purim was recorded in a scroll.